Welcome to Time for Forgiveness, where we explore real stories.
Real stories that transform your life through the power of forgiveness. And we're back with Mark Schultz. Hopefully, you saw episode one. And we're back with Mark because Mark had a very powerful story that he shared with us offline. And we said, hey, this is so cool. We want to go back on and share this with the audience. So, Mark, welcome back. I know you want to dig into this, and I'm going to let you just jump right into it and take it from the top on this story and let our audience in on this very powerful experience that you went through.
One of the greatest experiences of forgiveness that I saw, that I got to be a part of, was with my friend. And I'll just tell this story. It's his story to tell, but I just feel like it's so impactful for what you do. And in music, involved in music, and probably one of the most successful people in music in Nashville. And I'm having coffee with him one day, and he was just telling me about his. He's got a great wife, great marriage, great kids, and I was saying, hey, I hope I have a marriage like you one day. I hope I have kids like you one day. And he said something, and he said something kind of disparaging about himself or whatever, and I could tell that he meant it when he said it. And I remember saying, "Oh, that's not who you are. I can't believe you just said that." And he just looked at me in the eyes, and I said, uh, "You." I was encouraging him. I was just like, "You've been a huge hero to me." And he was like, "No, no." And the more I kept saying um, that he wasn't a disappointment, I think he was saying I've been a disappointment my whole life. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I go, "That's not who you are." I said, "That is not who you are." And the more I said it, the tears started welling up in his eyes, and his and he said, "You know what?" He said, "I had a brother who drank and was into drugs, and my mom really worried about him a lot, and it made her really sick, and she'd been in the hospital. And so I remember when I came home the first night I was able to go out. I came home about 30 minutes late, and my dad met me on the front porch, and he said, "You're not going to do this to your mom, and you're a screw up like your brother, you know." And that night he sent him to boarding school, and he never saw his mom again, because she did die a year or two later. He talked to her on the phone, but he was never ever able to see her again. And again, one of the most successful people that I know, a successful marriage and great kids. And he said, "You know what I'm waiting for?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I'm waiting for my marriage to fail. I'm waiting for my kids to turn out like screw ups. And I'm waiting for the shoe to drop, and for my dad to be right."
Wow.
Hmm.
And I said, I said, "Again, that's not who you are." And I said, "You know what? Your dad was wrong, you know?"
Yeah.
And he said, "I wish I could hear that, but my dad's not here any longer either." And he sat there, and we just had to talk through his story, and he had to realize he just wasn't the person that his dad thought he was at 14 years old, you know? And he'd had such a wonderful life, but I just thought the power of who his dad said he was at 13. So he was able to go back, as we were talked earlier, he was able to go back and spend time with that 13-year-old self, and go back to that little boy, and walk into the room and forgive his dad, and to be able to say, he in his mind he was able to go back and give himself a hug, and then walk into the room, and he as adult self was able to say, uh, "Dad," in his mind, uh, "I wish you could see who I'm going to turn out to be,
Hmm.
Hmm.
because I'm not this little boy anymore." And he said, for me to play that out, and for my dad to stand up and apologize to me, in my mind, and to hug both the 13-year-old self and to hug my adult self was such a healing moment for me. And he said, often when I feel angry, when I feel uh, hurt, I just have to trace it back to this moment. And I just have to go back to that moment again. And I just have to grab that little boy and I just have to hold him and tell him it's going to be okay.
Mm.
And I'm going to take care of you now. And we do some really great things. And I can't wait for you to see this. And he says, the little boy just relaxes and he just uh, doesn't see himself as that person anymore. And I just think that's so powerful
It
to
is.
share that.
I appreciate you sharing that because you think about also the power of these ideas that we accept about ourselves along the way and the weight that they carry. And what you just said about, I can't wait for you to see who I'm going to become because we are always in a state of becoming. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that story. Mm.
Yeah. I just think it's really powerful unless you go back to that place, unless you go back to that hurt,
Mm.
unless you go back to that trauma and make peace with it. And again, I just think it has a way of pulling all the levers without you knowing it, and you're acting
Mm.
out of certain ways when you're in your 50s that maybe is because of what happened when you were 13 or 15 or 17. Going back to those places and revisiting, forgiving yourself, forgiving the person who had hurt you. In a way, you get to quickly rewrite your story, and
Mm.
you're on a different trajectory um, after you do that.
Yeah. Um, and oftentimes we're not even aware of exactly where it is. Like you said, that moment or maybe even how to get there. How do you do that? That's one of the things we're going to do at the summit is we're going to walk people through that process so they can
It's beautiful.
feel the power of letting go, just
Mm,
and that's where forgiveness really is. It's just to completely let go, to abandon, right? And and when we do that, the transformation can occur so quickly. We were
mm,
talking to a TV personality that we know, and yesterday I hadn't talked to him in a couple of years, but he's had this great resurgence in his career, and he's been watching some of our episodes we've been posting, Mark, and he called me up and he said, um, I didn't realize how much resentment I was carrying, and this towards his career, things that had happened. Um, and he said I was blaming my agent, and I was blaming this movie or that movie, and blah blah blah. But it was never me. And he said when I
mm.
finally looked inside and realized that all of these things that were happening were really it was because of me, and it was because of the resentment and the anger and the blame and who I thought I was and who I blame myself for being. But he said when I was able to just let it all go and actually forgive myself, then he talked about the last 2 years in his career, how everything had just taken off, unfolded. Things were coming to him so easily. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't, trying to control things. It was just happening, and he's just
Yeah,
letting it happen. And
absolutely.
great things are coming. And I think that was such a great thing to hear yesterday, Kelly, because one of our great mentors, Mark, was Bob Proctor, and he would always just say, can you just let it happen? Just let,
Mm,
like,
mm,
you don't have to push, you don't have to try to control it, you don't have to try to, manipulate and blah blah blah, which for many years was my mo, you know,
mm.
and I still have a piece of that in me, but I appreciate you sharing that, and I was so inspired to hear what you just shared because we all have that space to some degree. And I think it's very few people that don't have to go back to something like that in their
Mhm.
life because what happens to one usually happens to all of us.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
would say what's interesting about that, the idea of that when you're acting out of when you're letting go, is a little bit like when I'm writing songs. If I'm worried about what people are thinking and
Mm.
I'm tight, my best songs don't come out. It's when I feel relaxed and I just let it go. Is when those really massively beautiful songs come out that seem to affect people the most. And I think those are the times where I'm able to act out of a flow
Hmm.
and just let it happen. because I think that's maybe one of the only times in my life where I'm not, as you said, trying to control, and I'm all of those things inside of me that are used to controlling or pushing or doing all that kind of stuff have finally relaxed and have let a flow state happen. Maybe what Bob's talking about, uh, and you've kind of all your resources are going in one direction instead of
Mm.
getting pulled all these different directions, and so that makes a lot of sense to me, not only in life but in songwriting as well.
I
Yeah.
remember Bob had told me, you know, Kelly, the number one reason people get stuck, remain stuck, is they're worried about what people think of them. And he said,
Mm,
when you let go of that, you can change the world. So,
mm.
yeah, I love that you
Yeah, I
shared
guess
that.
it's kind of like living life with your foot on the brake and
Mm.
just keep. That's the
Keep
other
pumping the
thing.
brake. Yeah.
Keep pumping the brake. But here's another thing that I think is. I was just thinking about this the other day. There was a time when I would get up and do a concert, and I would feel like uh, the clapping from the audience meant, "Oh, you're okay," you know.
Mm.
And if I got a standing ovation for the audience, I would feel like, "Okay, they like me. That's really really great." The thing is, I've learned if I go into a concert thinking, "What can I get out of this? Can they make me feel a certain way? Can I get a standing ovation?" Because if I get a standing ovation, it means that, okay, I'm still as good as I was last week or 2 years ago.
It's approval, right? Or
It's
yeah.
approval. So the shift for me has been not, okay, I'm just going to start in a place of giving. And I know people have come to the concert because they've lost their job. Maybe they're in a fight with their husband. Maybe something's not going right. Whatever it is, there's hurting people coming to the concert. And I know if I play the song as freely and as deeply and as heartfelt as I've ever played it, it's going to be like salve on just a broken, sore place. And what can I give the audience? Not what can I get from the audience, but what can I give to the audience? And something really beautiful happens to where people can feel that, and they have that sense of um, I don't know. It just feel it's a different shift. It's what can I get out of this for me, and what can I give away to somebody else? Again,
I,
there's two directions.
I think, like you said, people do feel that because there's an energy to it. There's an energy that comes with giving, but I'm sure as you give more, you've actually received more in your
Yeah,
concerts. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a connection that happens, and so now when I go out to do a show, I think in my mind, I don't want something from the audience. I want something for the
Mm.
audience, and that's a great shift for me. And then when I do that, it feels like the line afterwards, like it happened to the we spoke earlier about the 80-year-old man who had been adopted and hadn't forgiven his birth mom for giving up for adoption. It just happened in that concert where it hit him, to where he said, "You know what? I'm grateful for the gift of life she gave me, not for what I didn't get, but I'm grateful for what I did get." And again, he held on to me for 5 minutes and just sobbed. And he said, I'm so grateful I can finally let that go."
Mm.
And that's wanting something
So
for
cool.
him and not something from him.
Yeah. Love
So, do
to.
you have a
Love to.
concert coming up?
Do I have a concert coming up?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got, this is Christmas season. So
Yeah.
I've got one Saturday. I'm going back out
S-
for another one. So
So,
yeah,
where is it at?
in Nebraska
Mm.
somewhere. Uh,
Somewhere in Nebraska.
Somewhere. It just when there was a time before we had kids, I was doing so many shows, like 175. This is before I was married and had kids, that I would just pack bags and I would just set them by the back door, and then I would just wake up and just go, "Okay, where am I going today?" and grab my bags, and then somebody would call me and say, "Get on this flight and go to this there." But I will say this: my kids that stopped when the bus was going to pick me up at midnight outside the house, and when my oldest son Ryan, was 3, and I put him to bed, and I said, "Son, I'm not going to be here in the morning when you wake up." And he said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I have to go do a concert." And he said, "Well, what's that mean?" And I said, "Well, I have to go encourage some families." And he said, "You have to go away for that?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, well, why don't you just stay home and encourage our family? That that when he was 3, and I told my wife, I think my days of the bus picking me up
That's
at midnight
awesome.
going for
Words
3
of
weeks.
wisdom from your 3-year-old son. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, we'll stay in touch, Mark, and yeah, we just can't wait to to,
To do this together.
to lock arms, baby.
Yeah, it's exciting. I can't wait to
Okay.
hear your Bob Proctor stories because again, I'm a fan,
Oh
and
yeah.
Yeah.
and I really do. I just love to hear more about him and hear more about your story and uh, uh, yeah, to do the event. Honored that you would ask me, and I'm grateful for it.
Well, I'll tell you one real quick, Bob. It's my favorite story of all. Kelly
Sure.
served me. But when we first met Bob, we flew up to Toronto and we met him in he had this big broadcasting studio and that was attached to his house. And we're sitting there like this, and he's just getting to know us for a couple hours. And then he pushes this button, the screen comes out of the ceiling, and he's like, I'm going to now teach you the most valuable idea I've learned in 60 years of studying this. And he said, I'm going to teach you how your conscious and your subconscious mind work. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Bob, I've been studying this stuff too for a while. And, I think I have a pretty good handle on it. And he wheeled around and he said, shut your mouth. You don't know SHIT. And I
Is that
I
right?
just kind of went like this. Kelly was laughing. And yeah, Bob was awesome, but he was right. I just knew of it. I didn't really know it. But anyway,
It's amazing.
yeah,
Well, I'd love to.
he's the most unique person. I don't think we'll ever meet anybody like him.
Hmm.
He was this. We got to know him well, we were mentored by him and studied with him for 5 or 6 years and became really good friends. And he was one of my dear friends. He was like one of my best friends,
Hmm.
and Kelly too. And it just crushed us when he passed away suddenly in 2022. It's like I lost my dad all over again,
Mm, 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 mm. He
But
told the story about. I think this was him telling the story about how he changed his life around,
oh yeah,
how
Mm,
yeah,
he wasn't he at the bar all the time, and he was just with
mm.
other people, and
mhm,
he was talking about like, oh, this is as good as this is. Life's been unfair to me, and this is just how life is, and then totally changed himself around and kind of uh,
mhm.
forget who he met, or was he self-taught that way,
No, he
or who?
met Leland Val. It was Leland Val Vanderwall, wasn't it? There was a couple.
Raymond.
Ray, who?
Remember, he met his first one. He gave him the Think and Grow Rich
Yeah,
and said, if you read this. So he had mentors
along.
along the way. But when you talk about giving, Bob's energy is just so strong that that's all he focused on is what can I give. He was something special. But what was really cool is he had his 100th birthday scheduled at the Bellagio. The date was already picked. So I truly believed he was gonna make it. But I did ask him. He was in our film, and we were on set. And occasionally I've previously had kind of a fear of dying. Yeah, it was kind of, and I had asked Bob, are you afraid to die? And he said, no, Kelly, I'm actually excited. It's the first person that's ever said that. And he said, because I know where I'm going. And he said, I'll be
Mm,
upset because I still have so much to do here. But he said, when I
mm.
do go, talk to me like I'm in the next room because that's where I'll be. But
Wow.
he was a lot of wisdom with Bob. A lot of wisdom with
Yeah.
Bob.
Look forward to hearing those stories.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I gain it's interesting, and maybe this is with you too, but I can have a certain mindset for the day, and then and I forget what podcast it is on, but he comes, it's like little 5 or 10 minutes nuggets of just something to think about or whatever. And I'll turn that on, I'll get in the car to go to do something, and I'll hear that, and there's a total mind shift that happens after you hear somebody like Bob talk for 5 or 10 minutes,
Mm, yeah.
and it puts a new perspective on your day. You're just like, oh wow, I was kind of trapped in my own prison there for a second.
Yeah.
There.
Uh,
Yeah.
what my limitations were, and it's so neat to he's like one of those guys that kind of takes the roof off for you,
Hmm.
and
Oh yeah. He was.
I like that.
I still go back. I have some of his voicemails I saved, and
Oh, wow.
Robert,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah. He's a good one.
Mark, thanks so much. We're going to wrap it right here, but thank you for your heart and just, again, inspiring our audience today. We love it. So for Time for Forgiveness, for Kelly and I, we're going to wrap it up. Please subscribe and like on our YouTube channel. Lock arms with us. Help us bring this message out in a bigger, bolder way. And don't forget about this Forgiveness Summit. Join us in May. It's May 30th and 31st in Kansas City at the Church of the Resurrection. You can subscribe in the link below. And until then, again, just forgive because life is short. Just forgive. And we'll see you again next time on Time for Forgiveness.